course it happens that the moment I decide to film a wrap up, that people start talking outside and the wind starts blustering. So apologies for the background noise. I have tried to minimize it as much as I can. So much happened in June for me. I published a novel on June 15th. Hello, thanks. Oh my god, I got my my publisher compensation report the other day, and people are buying the novel in the UK. Yeah, which is kind of neat, right? The week that I published the book, I took some time off work, just because I wanted to be around in case anything happened, and I wasn't really sure how the timing was going to pan out. It ended up just being a very timely vacation, so because of that, I read quite a lot in June. I don't think it's my best reading month of the year so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books in June, counting the one reread that I did, which I'm not counting on Goodreads, but including the reread that I did of one of these, I read 10 books in June. Yeah. Jesus. I'm gonna try to go through this like in a reasonable amount of time, I hope. This is gonna be a long wrap up because a lot of these, honest to God, a lot of these were really, really good. And yeah, 10 books, which means this has been the best reading month I've had all year so far. So June, if it has not been the best in other ways, at least it's good in terms of reading. So without further ado, I hope you have a beverage or a snack. Let's get into the stuff that I read. Hold on, I'm just gonna like pile these up so that I'm not, just so that I don't forget anything here. One of these, I don't have a physical copy of actually, so pretend there's one more on this stack. Yeah, this is what I read in the month of June. The first thing that I read in June, this is Running with Scissors by Augustin Burroughs. This was freaking amazing. You know, you guys ever read those things where it's like, this came into my life at like the exact time that I needed to read it? Yeah, that was this book. I was really, really depressive when I picked this up, and this is kind of like the exact, like, literally the exact tone of read that I needed. This is a memoir, and the only reason that I even knew about this book and picked it up is because my freshman year of college, I had this flirtationship, shall we call it, with this really cool girl. Yeah, but she told me that her favorite book was Running with Scissors by Augustin Burroughs, and I just remembered it, I guess. And reading this, I was like, it's a really twisted book. And now I'm like, God damn it, she was even cooler than I thought she was when I actually knew her. So if by any chance you're watching this, you have spectacular taste. Yeah, anyway, this is, yeah, a really fucked up memoir. Probably one of the most, like, fucked up books I've ever read, and just really funny, though. Definitely just it, like, cycles wildly from, like, insanely painful and horrifying to, like, really just funny. And it's kind of like, just like this kind of like dry, like situational humor of like I literally can't believe what I'm reading kind of thing. I've never read something with this kind of tone before. The only thing I might be able to compare it to is it's kind of a funny story where it's like a feel-good book, but it's like got definitely an edge to it. It was just amazing and ridiculous, and I highly recommend it to anyone that wants to read it. Also, if you're, this is written by a gay guy, like, and a lot of it is about, like, his experiences being a gay guy. So, if, like, you're interested in, like, own voices literature written by gay men, then this is definitely, like, a really good one to pick up. My hair isn't cooperating, I'm sorry. Like, I know I need to cut my bangs. I've been putting it off for literally over a week. It's just like this now, I'm sorry. The next thing that I read is The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. This is a children's book. I remember reading this as a child and really liking it and finding it very just sweet. Do you guys know what's interesting? The nostalgia couldn't get me with this one. I, after rereading this, literally don't like it anymore. This is a book about a swan who can't speak, he's mute. So it's kind of good for like disability rep, I guess, if that's what you're looking for. Like that might be an interesting lens to read this through. It's about a swan who can't speak, he can't honk, he can't, make any of the noises swans are supposed to make. And so he learns to play the trumpet instead to serenade this girl that he's in love with, or like this girl swan he's in love with. And he learns how to write on a chalkboard too. So he communicates that way as well. You can look at my review on Goodreads for this, but the thing that I was most taken aback by this was like gender and like how like young boys are socialized to into their like traditional like gender role. I don't know why I put quotes around that because that is what it is. I don't know, like we talk a lot about like little girls being taught that like the end goal of life is to be married and stuff like that, right? This very much like, I mean, this is like a male protagonist and like definitely would have been a book that I feel like young boys might read too. This like also kind of suggests to like young boys that like the end goal in your life is to like serenade a girl and like like get married, like become a pair with somebody. Listen, if you're new here, I'm a giant romantic. Like, I literally, like, I know we're feminists on this channel, but like we are definitely not an anti-romance channel. I think it's just like the fact that, I don't know, it was really weird. And also from a disability standpoint, like the girl swan, Serena, she doesn't like Louis for his trumpet that he uses, like for his unique skill, like his unique way of, because that's what I was expecting, is I was expecting it to be like, oh, like because it's because he like sings and serenades differently than the other swans that she'll fall in love with him, right? But actually the way that this is framed is like he like, serenades her with his trumpet or whatever, and she's like, oh, he's so handsome, like, and I never noticed it before, but he's so handsome. So like the message is kind of like not that you're good for your differences and that somebody will love you because of those differences, but rather that somebody, like your desired like person, will love you based on how well you assimilate, like in spite of your differences from other people. And to me, that was just kind of like, kind of gross. I don't like that. It just didn't resonate with me at all as an adult. It's really interesting though, isn't it? That like I adored this as a kid and I wasn't, now as an adult, I'm like, ew. And also like the other thing is that Serena very much is just like an object. Like she is the prize that Louis gets for successfully like assimilating himself into like male swan society, and it's just kind of like, I mean, she has no free will of her own, and all of it is very looks based as well. All of it is, Louis loves her because she's really pretty, she loves him because he's very handsome. Very, very traditional ideas about love that I would actually call anti-love, like loveless. So I was not a fan of this. I gave this 2 stars. So that was a little bit of a letdown, if I'm being completely honest. Oh my god, and this was followed by another letdown. So the next thing that I read was People of the Book by Geraldine Brooks. I shouldn't have finished this. I shouldn't have even bothered. This is basically about this historian who is investigating the history of this very old Jewish text. It's very pretty, very uniquely decorated with just things like spectacular inks that don't exist anymore and insect wings and blah blah blah. And this wasn't really about, like, I say that's what it's about, but that's definitely not like the main thing of this book. Most of this is just following the book throughout history. Like, it's very strongly historical fiction, and I thought this was going to be more of like a thriller drama, like academia thing. Like, this sounded basically like a female Indiana Jones kind of story. So we'll see if it actually turns out like that. But yeah, it was boring. It wasn't enjoyable. There were way too many different characters, and it felt very impersonal. Like, it felt very much like a book that was written solely so that it would win an award. And God, the rating on Goodreads is like 4 something out of 5. Like, it's a very highly rated book, and honestly, I don't get it. I don't know what people are seeing in this. I mean, the prose is adequate, and I'm very much like a character person. Like, I need to find the characters themselves fascinating, and this just like wasn't like that. There were too many of them for me to relate to. I didn't really like this, so I don't know. I would be interested to hear what other people think about that. The next thing that I read was amazing. So I read this in a single evening, like all at once, literally all in one sitting, no breaks whatsoever. This is Hand to Mouth, A Chronicle of Early Failure by Paul Auster, or Auster. It isn't actually as big as it looks. They have a bunch of his works in here that have never been published before. And I read one of the plays. I didn't read all of it though. The actual narrative that he wrote, I did read that though, and it just amazing, exactly what I needed to hear right now. It's basically him just talking about his 20s and his early 30s and how it was just a big clusterfuck, like a giant disaster, basically. He talks about just living in poverty, wanting to be a writer and knowing that he doesn't want to do anything else, and just living in poverty because of it, you know, taking all these odd jobs and like awkward situations that happened with the odd jobs. He talks about the people that he met. He talks about, I think he works on like an oil rig at some point. Just fascinating stuff. His writing style, actually, I remember when I was reading this reminded me a lot about like Donna Tartt's writing style. Just very observant and detail oriented, and yeah, really humanizing. Like, you could totally picture everything that he was going through, and it very like dry and witty, and just I loved it so much. And definitely, if you're like in your 20s or your early 30s and you are like me and you're super ambitious and you kind of just want to like take life and rip its throat out because you're so just, you want everything, and you're scared that you haven't like done enough, I guess, absolutely pick this up. It's glorious. It's so good. I don't know, like, we live in such like a success-based culture. Like, we're all hoping one day to have made it, and there's just such a romance in failure, isn't it? I'm trying to learn how to have like a healthy appreciation for failure. I loved reading the plays that didn't work out, and just looking at his card game that he tried to invent and sell to make some extra cash. He talks about, there's like this one very mean CEO that like turned him down for like the card game thing, and he's like he's like talking about the way this man treated him in the boardroom, and he's like comparing him to a Nazi, and just you know, I can relate. Like, people in publishing treat you like garbage sometimes. I mean, many of them treat you amazingly too. Like, there's plenty of kind people in publishing, but because writing is such like an egotistical business, let's just say y'all would not believe the ways that I've been treated by booktubers sending out copies of the novel. Yeah. I'm not gonna drop names or situations, but you would not believe the way that people treat you. Next thing that I read was the third book in Bell Hook's series on love, her love theory, love philosophy series. This is Communion, the female search for love. Gosh, I love Bell Hooks so much. Here's the thing, I feel like in the first book, which is all about love, when I read that, a lot of that was kind of old news for me. Like, a lot of that is like, these are things that I already thought that, like, I'm hearing somebody put words to. I was like, okay, so, like, there is a problem, basically. I've suspected that we have a problem in our culture, but now I know that there is a problem and that people have been writing about this since 2002. This is the one that, like, brought things to my attention about myself that I hadn't realized. Like, just a lot of things. This book made me realize, like, a lot of things about, like, my personal, like, biases. And that was really helpful. I feel like, yeah, like I'm glad that I read this, and I'm glad that this gave me a lot to think about, to be honest. Just about, like, it's very helpful to, like read something and realize that actually, like, you still have some work to do and you don't have it all figured out. Yeah, I don't know. This is a great book. I definitely do recommend reading the first book in this series, called All About Love, first, and then maybe moving on to this one if you feel like it might be relevant. But yeah, this was awesome. Really enjoyed it. Definitely hard to read at times, but necessary. Like, very, very necessary if you're a person who wants to participate in romantic relationships and stuff like that. Especially if you want to participate in, like, male-female romantic relationships. Like, so necessary. Like, literally everyone needs to read this. Like, that should be, like, a prerequisite for dating, I think. So the book that I read twice was Feminist Theory. And it's called Xenofeminism, A Politics for Alienation. And I read this twice because the first time that I finished it, I thought to myself, I must not be understanding something correctly here. I must just be too stupid to understand this. And listen, I was not too stupid to understand it. The people that wrote it are off the rails. So I literally picked this up because I thought it was satire. And the further that I got into this, the more I came to realize, oh, wait a minute. They're being serious. Like, this is serious. This is not satire. So one of the things that this book posits, this is a real quote that made me think it was satire. You're not exploited or oppressed because you are a wage laborer or poor. You are a laborer poor because you are exploited. And the framing of this sentiment was meant to be like extended to other forms of oppression. So you're not oppressed because you're a woman because you're oppressed. Identifying oppressed classes of people as having their oppression be intrinsic to who they are, like, do you get what I mean? Like, you're kind of, like, weaving women's oppression into, like, the very fabric of our being. Instead of viewing it as an external circumstance that's forced on us, you're basically saying being oppressed is inherent to being a woman. Like, that's what that statement implies. So, die, perhaps. But so much of this was just, you could tell that this was written by people who really had no stakes in, like, any kind of, like, fight for women's liberation. They were just kind of pontificating to sound smart. There's a lot of hubris in this about, like, there's nothing natural that we can't fix using technology. And the one thing that really alarmed me about this is that they actually, like, unironically advocate for mind control. I have never seen a Star War. This is not that household. In this household, we prefer the prequels because Anakin is hot. I don't know shit about that. Because we don't support the rat in this household. But, there is literally a part in this where it's like that scene where they're sitting in the meadow. She's like, well, the trouble is that people don't always agree. And then he says, well, then they should be made to. And the whole point is that that's like Anakin showing that he's a bit of a fash. Listen, that's literally what this advocates for. There's literally a bit in this where they're just like, oh, we should utilize technology and technological structures to control, and they like wrap it up in a bunch of just like academic jargon. But when I looked up, like when I Googled what the words mean, this is what it was actually saying. It was basically saying we need to utilize technology, controlled by women and Q-slur, but then they also argue that, like, women don't exist and, like, Q-slur people don't exist. So it's, like, interesting. So basically, a straight man could walk in and say he's anything and then just take control of whatever mind control device you're using. And it's literally, like, the idea is to make us desire what we want to desire. Make us want what we want to want, like that kind of thing. Like, I don't know how to, if you don't understand why that's like a horrifying idea that someone posed in this text and now it has a 3.7 out of 5 on Goodreads, I don't know how to express to you how horrifying that is. Like, the thought of giving somebody else control over your thoughts because you don't want to think what you are thinking. I mean, that's I don't want to think about climate change, and I can press a button and make it all go away, even though, like, the world is on fire outside my front door. Like, do you understand how it just seems like a perfect weapon for truly evil people to control the populace with? Why on earth would you posit that as a means to liberation? Like, social control as liberation, mind control as liberation? It's Orwellian. Oh my god, I hated this so much. And so when I finished this, right, for the second time, I took extensive notes on this. Like, I'm not gonna grab it because it's all the way over there, but I literally took pages and pages of notes, breaking down each section of this. And BT dubs, there were so many places, like, it was so sloppy. There were so many places in this where, the authors were contradicting what they said in, like 2 paragraphs previous, and I was like, this is so sloppy. You're expecting that because you've wrapped it up in all these words that no normal human being with a 9-to-5 job knows, you've expected that people are just gonna assume that you know what you're talking about. But guess what? I had the week off of work. So I, at that time, was not doing regular 9-to-5 hours, so I had time to sit down with a dictionary and figure out all the fucked up shit you were saying. So I know, and I'm mad about it. Jesus. And after I finished this, I was like, okay, so whatever. So we picked up this feminist theory, and it's absolutely off the rails bonkers. Also another thing that this text advocates for is that literally the entire population should be on hormones. And the day that Big Pharma gets their hands on this theory and translates it to regular English so most people can understand it, we're fucked. The idea that, like, the majority of the population should be on these completely unnecessary and really highly experimental drugs when the human population basically has control over all the Earth's environments, and, like, ultimately all those substances are going to end up in the environments, and it's gonna, like, screw with the biome and the water supply and everything. I don't feel like I need to say more to make it evident how hubristic that is. But yeah, so anyway, so I finished this and I was like, wow, this is the biggest piece of shit I've ever read in my life. Like, please God, like, let it just be one crazy person that wrote this. I was like, all right, so, you know, this was written probably by some crazy guy, probably with like a septum piercing as his like college art project or whatever. And I did a bit of digging, and by digging I mean I looked up the website. And listen, this was not written by one crazy guy who doesn't know what feminism means, or just one crazy woman. This was written by a group of tenured professors. I've talked to, like, as somebody that really values learning and loves school, I've talked at great length with my own professors about what happens when you bring liberation ideology into a very elitist institution like that, where people are kind of basically like, the only way to get tenure is to come up with a lot of research and a lot of writing and a lot of ideas that no one has ever heard of. And ultimately, like, I feel like social liberation for any oppressed group just isn't complicated enough to generate that much material. So when you have I think that's where things like this come from. When you have professors that are trying to get tenure and they need to come up with some idea, any idea, that no one's ever thought of before, you end up with stuff like this. I don't think it would be as harmful if they weren't going and putting this stuff on Twitter where it then catches on. Like, just, because then that can, like, really derail actual liberation for people. I'll link my review below with, like, the total outline of all the issues that I had with this, but yeah, this is the book that I read twice. Like, please be assured that I read this through very, very carefully, and I wanted to be sure that I gave this, like, a fair shot and that I was properly understanding it. And this really is, on every level, unbelievably ignorant and misguided, and it's a distraction. It's a mirage. Oh my god, if you want to read feminist theory, just read Dworkin instead. This next one was also amazing. Okay, literally so good. I was not expecting this to be that good. This is The Darkening Age, the Christian destruction of the classical world. So I picked this up and I was expecting this to be like this kind of dry nonfiction thing, and it is nonfiction. It's written by a Cambridge scholar, and she's the daughter of a nun and a monk, and so she was raised Catholic, kind of informally Catholic though. She's a classicist now. Oh my gosh, one of the most emotional and vibrant nonfiction books I've ever read in my entire life. I was close to tears at points in this. Like, that is how this reads. She very much writes about history like it's a narrative. Like, she makes sure that you want to, like, feel what it would be like to be there witnessing the events happening. I was a little bit worried about just a little bit worried about like herder, like, isn't atheism great? I don't believe in shit, like, blah blah blah, like that kind of thing. When I picked this up, not like that at all. It's very do you know what? It's very empathetic towards ancient people, and I can clearly tell that this author understands that ancient people were people too. Like, people who worshipped the Greek gods and went to temples and participated in festivals and things like that were, like, no smarter, stupider than you or I. You know, they were people. Like, they had hearts and they believed in things and they had families and they wanted to feel safe in their homes. And this just, like, gut-wrenching reading about what the beginning of Christianity was like. I should warn you, there's some really, really graphic and pretty shocking stuff in here. Interesting things that I read about in this is the fact that, like, there weren't nearly as many Christian martyrs as, like, Christianity says there was. Christianity says that there were thousands of martyrs at the beginning of Christianity, but actually there were, like, hundreds. And a lot of them were literally begged not to kill themselves by, like, the emperors at the time. I'm definitely not, like, one of those people that's like, grr, like, I spend all my free time and energy hating this religion I'm not a part of. Like, I'm not like that, BT dubs. I hate that I have to say that, but I am saying it here, just because I know that otherwise people have a conniption. This made me mad. Like, this made me really, really mad. The stuff about the burning of the Library of Alexandria was shocking. The stuff about the mathematician Hypatia was shocking as well. That one made me really mad. Just all the destruction and I mean, I had never really thought about the reason that the eyes and the faces were knocked off of old classical statues when you see them in museums. I assumed that was due to time, but no, it was literally due to hate. It was literally due to angry mobs of Christians. That went into people's religious sacred spaces and defiled them in every way possible. It made me so mad. It made me so mad. Like, the absolute just, like, disrespect that people must have felt. Especially because, like, the ancient Greeks and Romans, like, when they built temples to the gods, like, there wasn't this sense of, like, God is out there somewhere. It's like, this is literally, like, God's house. Like that right there is where Apollo lives. And the thought of, like, defacing that and, like, decapitating the statue, just highly, highly recommend it, especially if you live in, like, a predominantly Christian country like the United States. Please, like, I'm begging you, please read this. Like, this, we need nuance in this world, right? Like, even if you, like, honestly, I think the most important thing would be for, like, Christians to read this, to be honest, to kind of get a better understanding of, like, what, like, how other people felt about the triumph of Christianity. And then the next thing that I read, this was an impulse buy. I was not planning on reading it. This was not on my TBR. I'm so glad I picked it up, though, because it was awesome. This is The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. This is, gosh, it's just a very well done romance. Just an awesomely done romance. This is basically the story of this girl who gets trapped in a car with her sister, her ex, and her ex's best friend, and this random guy that they found on the side of the road. While they all try to get to this wedding of their mutual friend on time. And it was just, oh my god, the pacing was so good. I liked also that we got, like, the male love interest perspective. Like, personally, I like that a lot better than just having, like, the girl's perspective. Very just, like, respectful of all the characters. Like, all the characters were super, super fleshed out. And there wasn't really, like, a clear antagonist. Like, the antagonist had, he was humanized and he had motivation that made sense. And gosh, I loved all of them. I don't know what it is about, like, romances that do this to me, but, like, literally romances, like, get my heart rate up. Like, literally no, like, I could be reading, like, a thriller or, like, horror and, like, someone's literally being dismembered and it's, like, completely straight face, like, whatever, like, I've seen it all before. And this, it's like, oh, he accidentally touched her hand, and then, like, I have to take, like, 20 minutes to get, like, my pulse, to get my pulse down to, like, a resting rate again, because I'm ridiculous, that's why. I did feel like a lot of, like, the female side characters were, I don't know, they just had like some unnecessary details about them. Like one of them is mentioned as kind of like being struggling with an eating disorder, but then it's like resolved within like one page. And I'm just like, okay, like you didn't need to mention that. It's okay, like we can have a book with women in it without one of them struggling with anorexia. Like really, we really can do that. It's okay. I'll probably read more by this author. Let me know if anyone has any recommendations of stuff by her, because I trust her now. Okay, and then the last thing that I read in June, rounding off the month to a terrible end, was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I DNF'd this at page 100. The 4 out of 5 star rating on Goodreads. You guys are the perfect consumers, really. Like you will 5-star anything that is peddled to you. This is bad. Like this is an awful book. If you want to hear what my actual problems with this book were, you can watch my reading vlog of it. I talk about them a lot in it, and I don't really feel like talking about it more here. This was very much like a book that was written solely to be sold on Book Talk. And that's what I'm gonna say about that. Also, okay, so this is gonna be like a slight update to these wrap-ups. I read too much to include movies in these anymore. I think the movies are I might do something at the end of the year talking about like this whole thing I've been doing with only watching movies made by women and my favorites that I saw. But in terms of like the monthly wrap-ups, it literally just takes way too much time, and I can't. So I'm omitting those from this wrap-up. Yeah, that is the end of this very long June wrap-up. I hope that you've enjoyed watching this. I hope that you've seen some new books that you want to check out. Honestly, the one that I'm like, please read this is, this. If you read any book from this stack, please read this. It's so good. As for how my reading's going right now, I've been reading the same book since the beginning of July. It was a book that I paid full price for at Barnes & Noble, so I feel obligated to finish it. And to bribe myself to get through with finishing it, I've started rereading The Secret History to reward myself for getting through more pages. So that is how the reading is starting for July. It's not looking very promising, but who knows? Maybe it will get better. And I hope everybody's summer is going well. I hope you're staying hydrated. I hope that, I hope you're staying hydrated. I hope if you grow plants, your plants are doing well, and that nasty people stay the hell away from you. Yeah, that too. Yeah, let's claim that energy, actually. Thanks. Bye.